Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review. I'm here today to talk about Black History Month. The month that is a celebration of my people, because I am a black man and everything. And it's about all our accomplishments, all the oppression that we have gone through over like centuries of living in like America and stuff like that. So I'm here today to talk to you about how black people created rock and roll music and not white people. So when you think of rock and roll music, normally people associate that with like white people because white people have dominated in rock and roll music. However, some don't know that rock and roll music, just like country music, was actually created by that of black people. And just like everything else that comes with black people, it got stolen from us. When many people think of lots of great rock and roll singers, such as like Aerosmith, Little Richard, Phoebe Dobson, Elvis Presley, trying to think of some other like Chuck Berry. Like most people think of them, but a lot of people don't think of the actual like originator. Most people think it's like Johnny Cash and everything, but it's not. See, the thing about a lot of music back in the day that was created by black people is like it was really popular, but because segregation and racism and stuff like that, a lot of white households didn't want to play it, and they didn't want their kids listening to it. In fact, I remember Little Richard said a long time ago that like his music was like so popular that all the little white kids were listening to it, and they would have his albums, but their parents would make them put his album in like the dresser drawer. And there was some song he sung, I can't remember what it was, but then a white guy covered it and it became popular because of that white guy and stuff, and they would put his album up on top of like the dresser and everything because they knew what was coming. They knew that people start liking black people and their music and their style and everything. At some point in time, the world would change, and it did. Which is why things are going on in the country the way it is now, because they're trying to regain power and everything. I swear to God, boy, racism and stuff. But anyways, it's like, there were a lot of people that white like rock and roll singers such as Elvis Presley and like many others and stuff would copy from that of like black artists. And then sadly, when the white singers would do stuff like that, like people assume, oh, they created that dance move, or they created that type of like sound on the guitar, or like that or the way they sung it and stuff, like Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley, they were notorious for ripping off like black entertainment stars and singers and stuff, and would never give them the credit when credit was due. But if it wasn't for those black stars, like there would be like, no Elvis Presley and stuff like that. And I remember Little Rich always talked about like, how he helped out this singer and that singer. I think Mick Jagger, what I'm saying? Like how he discovered them and stuff like that, but never got the credit. But who exactly created rock and roll music? Who was truly the first pioneer to get the electric guitar out and start like, shredding and stuff like that? Well, there was a woman who I've actually never heard of. Her name is Sister Rosetta. I think her last name is Tharpe or Tharpe or something like that, but I think it's pronounced Tharpe because I don't see that asterisk on the E. But she was born Rosetta Newbin, And she was born back in 1915 and sadly died in 1973. Now, back in those days, rock and roll music was a heck of a lot different. It was infused with a lot of like spiritual music and gospel music and stuff, but she is known as the godmother of rock and roll. Singing, playing on her electric guitar, like having a combination of spiritual and gospel lyrics with electric blues and swing music and stuff. And yeah, that pissed off a lot of conservative churchgoers and stuff. But she ensured people that, even though this sound is completely different and stuff, and it might get you popping and stuff, she's not going away from her gospel roots and stuff like that. And she influenced a lot of people: Johnny Cash, Little Richard, Elvis Presley. But a lot of people just don't know who she is. And she even influenced people like Jerry Lee Lewis and, Chuck Berry and like Carl Perkins and stuff, and even Tina Turner herself. And it's just interesting how this one woman who nobody's never really heard of, who had a unique style of blending like electric guitar, rhythm and blues, and like, gospel music. She pioneered it for so many people, and even in other countries like Bandmate, that's a Japanese rock band, or Baby Metal, that's like, well, they're more pop music, but they say they're like metal and everything, heavy metal, but to me they're more like pop and rock and stuff like that. But it's just fascinating to know that like things that get created and lost throughout history because people either don't know who they are or they try to hide who they are because they don't want society to know who they are and stuff. Happy Black History Month, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye.